Off the ball. This is News Talk.
Now, you're very welcome back. So, with the possibility of impeachment still very much alive, there is a queue to abandon Donald Trump's sinking ship, and the list is growing. It now applies to the PGA of America. It would seem even golf officialdom know that the jig is up. So, Trump Bedminster in New Jersey was set to host the 2022 US PGA, one of golf's four majors, a big deal. And the US PGA has revoked that agreement in their statement. They didn't explicitly reference Wednesday, but they did say it would be detrimental to the work of the PGA rather to proceed. And it would seem as well that the RNA may be following suit when it comes to Turnberry. We'll come to that in a moment. But first, Lawrence Donegan is with us. Good evening.
How you doing, Joe? When they said the PGA of America said detrimental, they said detrimental to the brand, to their own brand. So it wasn't like detrimental to democracy or detrimental to the world. It was detrimental to the brand. So they've been kind of quite criticised over here for that.
I figured you might pick up on that, actually.
Sorry, Joe.
But it's a fair point. It is a fair point. I mean, the brand is all important at this stage as Trump exits, and golf is as aware of that as anybody. Although, to be fair, it is the second time in 6 years a course has been removed off a planned schedule. The 2015 Grand Slam of Golf was due to be held at Trump National in LA, but that was cancelled after Trump's remarks about Mexican immigrants. So there is some past history. I know a US Open in 2017 went ahead at Bedminster. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of the golfing world and Trump, because that is an interesting relationship, just for a moment on Wednesday evening, because I think, to an extent, we all sit down and are gripped by an evening on CNN, and of course, Trump's presidency has had very real effects, for all of us. Paris Accord and various other issues. But to be living in the States, to be raising a child in the States and almost feeling like the country is coming apart at the seams, I mean, that is... that's a lived experience as opposed to us almost looking on in bemusement and horror. You're kind of experiencing the realities of that. So, thoughts Wednesday and the last couple of days, Lawrence?
Well, I mean, how do you sum it up? To a certain extent, I live in a kind of liberal enclave in Northern California, so quite isolated from it. However, you watch my kid and his contemporaries; they are utterly gripped by this. It's an event. Well, certainly nothing I've ever experienced in my life, but I can't imagine what it must be like to be a kid and watching this, a kid who's aware of events in the world, not young kids. So it's, it's seismic. Goodness knows what it must have been like in DC last week. This is, my kid's 15 years old. All he wants to do is listen to political podcasts right now, to catch up and to try and understand what's happened. People will be talking about this, and the great American historian Michael Beschloss was on TV this morning, and he was saying, this will be talked about and written about in 200, 300 years' time. It's, as I say, it's hard for me, from where I am, to fully grasp it, but you can get a sense of it, and it only appears to be growing. And goodness knows what's going to happen when he leaves, because there's a 30 to 35% swathe of the population believe in this guy. It really is. I'm not saying anything original here, but it really is a kind of cult, and it's kind of scary to think about where it's heading.
Bedminster, Trump's course, was awarded the PGA Championship in 2014, which feels like a more instant time right now. 2022 will be right in the midst of the midterms. You suspect, as you've just outlined, this problem is not going away, and so official golf, and we'll get on to unofficial golf actually in a moment. But it would seem, Lawrence, that official golf is doing its damnedest right now to move away from Trump.
Yeah, I think this is a break, and I don't think it's ever coming back. That relationship is ever coming back. They kind of, for a long time, they held him at arm's length. The thing about Trump, he bought Bedminster, which is a club, a distressed golf club. This is his business model. He'd jump into a distressed golf club, buy it, put a bit of money into, and try and gloss it up. He really got involved because he couldn't get into any of the established East Coast golf clubs. So there was he eventually got into Winged Foot, but I mean, a lot of the, Shinnecock's and all these golf would never have anything to do with him. So to a certain extent, golf has kept him at arm's length. But official golf, you're right. The one you left off the list, Joe, Doral. The PGA Tour had an event at Doral for 50 years or so, and they took it away in 2016, again after the remarks on Mexican immigrants. And I noticed this week that the event was taken to Mexico, and it's leaving Mexico this year, and it's going back to Florida, and it's not going back to Trump's course. So yeah, I mean, this really is the break, and I sense that there's absolutely no way of it ever being restored. The statement from the RNA was pretty declarative, although it was quite cute. It didn't actually mention the name, but it's made it clear that they are not going back to Turnberry as long as Trump is the owner there.
Yes. He bought Doral in 2012, and as you said, it was a mainstay on the tour for a long time. The RNA statement, Martin Slumbers here, we will not return. This is to Turnberry, iconic venue, Watson Nicklaus in 77 and Tom Watson's Church Sink more recently. Will not return until we are convinced that the focus will be on the championship, the players and the course itself, and we do not believe that is achievable in the current circumstances, which it surely isn't. Now, it should be said, like Slumbers said before, he believed Trump had been good for golf in terms of renovation in the past, and in February of last year he said that he'd be more than open to playing a round of golf with Trump, and he said, Turnberry, I am sure it will stage an Open in the not too distant future. So, I mean, golf is reacting now. It would be wrong to say it's been totally ahead of the game either. Oh,
it's definitely not. And there was a really great column in the Washington Post last week about this. What happens when Tiger played with Trump and we all piled on, you say, well, I have to respect the office. Well, Trump won't be in the office after January the 20th. And it'll be very, very interesting to see who still hangs out with this guy and who doesn't. I suspect that there will be a queue of golfers running to play with the disgraced American President Donald Trump. So yeah, I mean, golf, but by no means, again, who cares? But I mean, I had a go at Rory, but a while back when he played with Trump, and the abuse I got for bringing that up. I mean, Rory subsequently said that he wished he hadn't done it. But yeah, golf has not been not been in the vanguard of the anti-Trump movement. Let's put it like that.
And so, segueing slightly into unofficial golf, that's the point you've raised now. Like, to what extent is Trump toxic in the eyes of golfers? And we are talking about Republican country here. You're shaking your head. You're shaking your head as if to say not at all. Because I was going to put it to you. For instance, Bryson DeChambeau, who celebrated his US Open, I think it might have been at Bedminster with some of the Trump family.
Went back to Bedminster.
So we noticed that the Trump golf logo was not on his bag in Hawaii, and people said, well, I wonder, has Bryson seen the light? Your laughter says, don't be so silly.
Well, no. Again, like the PGA of America, I'm sure Bryson's he wouldn't have been getting paid much for the Trump golf logo in his golf bag, because the Trump is nothing if not cheap. He probably kind of leaned on him. I'll give you a couple of free nights at Bedminster, and you can stick that. That's valuable real estate if you're a golfer of Bryson's standing. So what was your question again, Joe?
To what extent will he be toxic, do you think, across the PGA Tour?
Not in the slightest. Not in this. I mean, again, somebody asked me this morning, what percentage of PGA Tour pros would be supportive of Trump politically? Again, this is a number we will never know, but you'd have to suspect is above 80%. I mean, I can't think off the top of my head one single publicly liberal golfer on the PGA Tour, not one. I can't think of any, which is quite remarkable when you think about it. Again, Trump played so much golf, so you really have to pay attention. And it's not often said, but there's he plays a lot with Pat Perez. I mean, who knew? So these names are never released, but occasionally something will slip out, and there's always PGA Tour golfers involved. It's he is them, and they are him. I mean, the PGA Tour golfers who express political views on social media are 100%. They're usually just terrible right-wing opinions. I tell you, so it's now forgotten, but back in the day, Ricky Fowler, before his minders got to him, used to post the most vile right-wing stuff on his Twitter feed, and obviously that was bad for the brand. And that was all expunged, and he's now it's all it's all cookies and cream, Ricky Fowler. But no, it's as I say, post January the 20th, I suspect there will be a queue of golfers lining up to play with Donald Trump. I mean, look at last week with Sorenstam and Gary Player. The day after the insurgency in Washington, D.C., they're lining up to get their little medals from Donald Trump. I mean, it's just astonishing.
That was astonishing. I mean, of all days to be there at the White House.
Of all days.
Yeah, no, that was, because I am, by the way, when I have this conversation, I am differentiating between being a Republican, which, like, perfectly fine, it's political conviction, and Trump, who is just so clearly a different beast entirely. Like Nicklaus jumps to mind if you're talking like the greatest champion, as is often said in the history of the game. Whatever about player, we can debate that, but the greatest champion in the history of the game. I mean, like he was just like classic apologist. Trump kind of rough around the edges and says some mad things, but we've got to protect America from socialism. In his big post before Trump was elected, and said Trump had worked for the average person. I was kind of thinking, like, surely. But he's got to see some sense here. But then even I did a bit more digging. He did an interview with the Palm Beach Post after that Instagram post he put up, and he's saying things like, on the COVID deaths, the hospital gets more money with COVID than they do any other death. I'm sure there's been a lot of that. I don't think the deaths are the correct number, and I hate to say that rather. So he's, even buying into conspiracy theories about the number of COVID deaths, and it's bloody Jack Nicklaus here. Like he's like he is the golden boy. Well,
the thing about Nicklaus is that he has been he would vote for the proverbial chimpanzee if it had a Republican rosette on its chest. He was out campaigning back in the day for George W. Bush right after the Iraq War. So I don't think we would expect any less or any more from Jack Nicklaus.
You see, I sort of do when it comes to Trump. I just think this guy is so extreme to everything which has gone before. That's why I still reserve the right to be actually kind of not maybe shocked, but like disappointed. Like, oh, come on, you as well, really? You're seeing the last 4 years and you think that's great?
But you got to remember, Joe, this is a guy who got 74 million votes in the presidential election. Sure. I mean, he has a broad constituency which is prepared. I mean, you will have. There was a great piece in the New Yorker about 6 months ago about how the country club Republicans flocked to Donald Trump. I mean, they can, and I would put Jack Nicklaus in that group. I mean, they can. He, as you say, the line is, well, he's a bit rough around the edges, but he gets things done, and he's and he's good for people like me. So again, we can tell ourselves all sorts of lies to justify our actions, and I mean, Jack Nicklaus is as good as anybody at doing it. But as I say, I mean, if I'm a PGA Tour golfer, I'm all for moving to Florida where I don't have to pay 13% state taxes. There's no state taxes. I'm all for Donald Trump, who gives great tax breaks to rich people. Again, they're just they vote their pocketbook, I guess.
So to sum up slightly too neatly, but if I was to sum up your sense, then it's that officially this change on the PGA's behalf is a significant one, and officially, Trump courses are not going to be hosting big tournaments, it would look like, for the foreseeable, but unofficially his supporters very much remain his supporters.
Oh, but very much so. The interesting thing as well is he will. Staging big championships is very, very important for the brand. I mean, I think Trump bought Turnberry in 2014. Since then, the resort has lost £45 million. In the foreseeable future, there's no way he's getting an Open Championship. I mean, he will have to divest himself of these assets. They're massively loss-making assets. So maybe one day golf won't actually have to face this problem. He'll be gone from golf. But on the other side, the professional golf community will still hang out with Donald Trump. No doubt in my mind about
that. One last point, totally separate. I'm just curious for your thoughts on this. Tournament of Champions was on over the weekend in Hawaii. Justin Thomas in his third round, missed a putt for par, and you know, geez, there's not a golfer listening who hasn't said terrible things to him or herself after missing a putt. But in Thomas's case, he was picked up very clearly on a microphone saying "you F" and homophobic slur followed. And afterwards, I have the audio here. I think he gave what was a fairly ashen-faced and genuine apology after the third round. Just have a listen.
Justin is joining us now. How would you explain what happened on the golf course today, Justin?
It's inexcusable. First off, I just apologize. I mean, there's no excuse. I'm an adult. I'm a grown man. There's absolutely no reason for me to say anything like that. It's terrible. I mean, I'm extremely embarrassed. It's not who I am. It's not the kind of person that I am or anything that I do. But it's unfortunately I did it, and I have to own up to it. And I'm very apologetic.
We learned a lot through adversity. I know it's not been a long time and you're still digesting this, but what do you think you're going to learn from today?
A lot. I mean, it's like I said, it's inexcusable. I mean, I'm speechless. There's nothing. As I found out when I got done on the golf course, or when I got done with my round. I mean, it's bad. There's no other way to put it. I need to do better. I need to be better. It's definitely a learning experience, but yeah, I deeply apologize to everybody and anybody who I offended, and I'll be better because of it.
Okay, so look, that word's clearly in his lexicon. Lawrence, it doesn't just find your mouth at a moment like that unless it's something that you tend to use. I would suspect he may well disagree. So how does the PGA Tour handle this? And like, what of Thomas now? You know, I was kind of surprised. He didn't seem like that sort, you know, seemed like a more enlightened fella.
Well, again, he's a country club boy, you know, came through the college golf system, which is fairly, you know, masculine and toxic to a certain extent. But the thing about Thomas is he's actually, you know, my sense of him is yours, same as your sense. He seems like a pretty decent, you know, grounded guy. And I thought that apology, unlike many apologies I've seen over the years, was pretty sincere. But you ask, you know, what's the PGA Tour going to do about it? The answer is, we'll never know.
Yeah.
Because they have this insane system of not commenting on suspensions and fines and punishments. So we will never know if Justin Thomas gets, you know, banned for a couple of weeks, or if he gets fined £50,000. Again, I have no idea. I'll tell you one thing I do know. I once quoted an LPGA Tour player in The Guardian using a swear word, and she was mad at me, by the way, and she got fined $5,000. I mean, I think the profile of this and Thomas's profile, I mean, he's looking at 50,000 plus, I would imagine, at least something like that. But we'll never know.
The NBA fined Kobe Bryant 100,000 for a similar moment years back. So we'll see. And then for Thomas, it's probably, for him, this is something that follows him around now. That's just the deal. No.
Well, the thing about, I mean, right now, I would say Thomas is probably the poster boy for the PGA Tour. Kind of wholesome, middle American boy, you know, ostensibly a pretty nice guy. I mean, this is I think he moves on from it. Again, from my perspective, I'd be prepared to give him another go. But it's, you know, he sounded devastated. Yeah. And so maybe his devastation was the fact that he knew how much it had hurt his quotes and quotes brand. But I guess we'll never see something like this again. Just a quick point, Joe. The other thing is these mics, with no fans around, these mics are picking up a lot of stuff. You know, the John Ram thing at the weekend as well was pretty spicy. I wonder if the PGA is going to do something about that. They provide great entertainment because you get to hear what the caddies and the players are talking about, but you also get to hear this kind of stuff, and I wonder if the PGA Tour might do something about that. Yeah,
it's a good point. I suspect we may see a change next weekend. Lawrence Donegan, always great to have you on. Thanks so much.
All the best, Joe.